welcome back to my channel. My name is Opayemi Goddess and you're very much welcome. So in today's video, I'm talking about things to consider when you're moving trust or when you're changing trust when pregnant. So I actually moved from one trust to another trust when I was about 26 weeks, I think. I think I was about 25 or 26 weeks really, when I changed from one trust to another trust. So if you're moving trust, or should I just say if you're moving employer or changing employer, I think that's the best way to. So regardless of who your employer is, so even if it's not the NHS, even if you work with a private company, regardless of all of that, I believe this video would help you if you're changing your employer or if you're moving from one employment to another employment when pregnant. So stay tuned and let's just get started. First thing I would actually mention is that never lie about your pregnancy. I know this for sure because I was tempted to also lie about my pregnancy. No, let me say I was tempted not to disclose my pregnancy. Despite the fact that I at that time I already knew that considering the UK laws, you should not be discriminated because you're pregnant, but I still had my fears, I had my anxiety, around disclosing my pregnancy because I did not want to lose that opportunity. As soon as I applied for that job and I was called for the interview, honestly I was thinking about it. Should I tell them? Should I not tell them? Should I just appear at the job pregnant? I thought about all of that, but having gone through the UK laws surrounding pregnancy and maternity, I realized that I will never be discriminated because of my present status. Because of that knowledge, I went into the interview with a lot of confidence, knowing that I will be judged based on my merit, based on my qualifications, and based on how efficient I am, not necessarily based on the fact that I was pregnant at that time. So that's the first thing I would say. Don't lie about your pregnancy. Trust me, no one will discriminate against you because you're pregnant. So disclose your pregnancy as soon as you can. So for me, even though during the interview I never mentioned I was pregnant, but I was extremely sick during the interview. I was in my first trimester at that time and talking was even very difficult. I was really sick, but I made it through the interview. And one thing I know that really helped me during the interview was because the field I was applying for, the role I was applying for was also my current role at that time. So I wasn't changing roles at that time. So I didn't have to even prepare for the interview. This is something I'd done for several years, over a decade. So it was very easy for me to go into the interview sick, and I was still able to pull through. The interview went well, but that's basically because it was something I'd been doing, so I didn't have to prepare. So if you're planning to change employer when you're pregnant, this is my opinion, especially if you are like sick now, you're pregnant and you're sick, you may want to consider applying for the same role as something you're doing at the moment. So even if you don't have the time to prepare for the interview because of your sickness, you will still be able to do well at the interview. But don't forget, the main focus is informing them. So I did inform my new employer after my interview. When they got back to me to tell me, oh, you did so well, they even told me I was the first candidate they chose of all the people that were interviewed that day. I actually had to tell them, of course by email, I told them I was pregnant and if they'll be okay with the fact that I was pregnant. And they actually told me outrightly that pregnancy has nothing to do with my employment. Like, I would never lose the job because I was pregnant. So I think you should also do the same. Let them know you're pregnant. You may not want to tell them during the interview because that's not the essence of the interview, but as soon as you get the job, let them know. And if you're like far gone during the interview and it's like a face-to-face interview, they can already tell you're pregnant anyways. But for me, I think my own interview then was virtual and I wasn't even showing yet. But if you're already showing and it's a face-to-face interview, they're not blind, they would already see that you're pregnant. So that way you don't even have to like formally inform them because they can already tell you're pregnant. Next points will be very applicable to you if you're like showing already, like you're far gone, you already have a bomb and your interview is like a face-to-face interview. So if that is the case, I think it's wise to also ask them during the interview, maybe after you're done with the interview and you're sure you've impressed them. When you get to the point where they say, oh, do you have any questions for us, I think it's actually better, or it's safe actually, to ask them about their maternity pay or the protocols regarding their maternity pay. And I'm saying this because when I moved to another trust, I did not have any issues with my maternity pay. They considered my previous years of experience or service. They actually call it continuous NHS service. So the fact that I was moving from another NHS to another NHS, my trust considered it as continuous service. They didn't consider it as a break in my service, because it was right from my previous trust to this other trust. And but I know that some trusts don't perceive it that way. I've heard of people, or I even know people, that when they moved from one trust to another when pregnant, they didn't get their whole entitlement. So some trusts will actually say, oh, you got pregnant in your previous trust and you were already far gone in your previous trust before you actually moved to this trust. But I know that there are also trust that do not really mind, as long as you have that continuous NHS service and it meets up with the requirements. They would not mind. My trust never minded that. Like, it wasn't even an issue at all. They just had to get back to my previous HR to get, even though I told them for how long I had worked in the NHS, but they wanted like a formal document from my previous trust. So all they had to do was to get in touch with the HR of my previous trust, who then give them like a downloaded file of my continuous service, and that was all we had to do. Really, it was quite easy. They did not discriminate me based on that. I also got all my entitlement based on the continuous NHS service, like I said. But the reason why I'm actually saying you should ask at the end of your interview is because some employers will not give you all your entitlement because you're joining them when you're pregnant. So it's best to clarify that, so that you already know what you're entitled to, so that you would not be shocked when you now put to bed and then you get to see your maternity pay and you're wondering why you're getting peanuts. But if you had asked during the interview or after the interview, you would not be shocked. You'll be better prepared to know what your entitlement would be. For me, after the interview, when they got back to me to tell me that I was successful and they would love to hire me and give me the job, I remember sending an email to the HR asking about the maternity protocol, and she actually told me outrightly that I was entitled to everything because I had so and so number of years of continuous NHS service. Okay, so now that you've gotten the job, you were successful in the interview, they've gotten back to you to tell you congratulations, you've gotten the job, you've started your paperwork and all of that, and you've been given like an unconditional offer of employment. Congratulations. I feel like the next thing to now do is to take annual leave from your current employer. So for me, I was moving from one NHS to another NHS, but I wouldn't know what the protocol would be if you're moving from an employer to an entirely different employer, say like a private company and all of that. I would not know, honestly. In my own case, it was from one NHS to another NHS, and it was easy for me to now apply for annual leave from my present NHS. And the reason why I'm saying you should apply for annual leave is so that you can have ample time to prepare for your new job, the new role, even if it's the same role as what you've been doing. But the fact that you're going into a new office, a new employment, altogether, I feel like you need some time. For us, we're even moving city, so I wasn't just moving from an employer to another employer. I was also moving city. We're moving from one city to another city, so we needed ample time, or I needed ample time. Don't forget, you're pregnant, you would be exhausted so easily. So for me, I actually applied for 2 weeks annual leave from my present employer. So I actually used those 2 weeks to plan, to prepare. Was it even 2 weeks or 3 weeks? I think it was 3 weeks. So I actually applied for 3 weeks leave from my present employer at that time, and those 3 weeks I was able to rest, of course, but of course we're preparing to move. We're packing because we're moving everything from Essex to Manchester. So please, I would actually advise you, because you're pregnant, you need time to rest. Take some annual leave from your present trust, or let me say your present employer. And especially if the job is something that is transferable, so take annual leave from this present employer, so that that annual leave cuts across the time you'll be resuming into your new job. So I remember taking annual leave, I think early May, maybe first week in May or something, or second week in May, and then I resumed in my new trust, I think first week in June of that year. So I had like 3 weeks to plan, prepare, and then when we moved to this new city, I still had like about 3 or 4 days before my resumption, which I actually used to rest and prepare. So please don't forget to take, even if it's just 1 week, even if you don't have so much annual leave left, if it's just 1 week, if it's just 2 days or 3 days, make sure you apply for certain number of days because of your status, you're pregnant, so that you can use that to rest and prepare for your new employment. So now that you've gotten the job and then you're resuming your new job, what you should do as a pregnant woman, on the very first day you resume your job, make sure your line manager conducts a risk assessment for you. This is something I'm thankful for. I'm actually particularly thankful about my present job, even though I'm on maternity leave, because I joined the trust when I was 26 weeks. I was really far gone, but they were so accommodating. I remember the very first day I resumed was the day the line manager pulled me up and was like, we need to do your risk assessment ASAP. I was even like, well, should we just hang on maybe next week and all of that? She was like, no, we have to do it today. This risk assessment is actually for your own benefit, because that is when your line manager would assess your risk, the things you're supposed to do, the things you're not supposed to do, and the things that you can even do as a pregnant woman, but you personally, based on your own situation, your own health status, you cannot do. So there are even things that I could do as a pregnant woman, but because I was going through a lot of medical issues, I could not do. So make sure that as soon as you resume that job, it doesn't even have to be the NHS. I'm only saying this because I moved from NHS to NHS. Whatever employment it is, make sure you do a risk assessment that same day you resume the job, or maybe the following day. Don't let it linger for long, because if you don't do that, you may end up doing roles or tasks. Yeah, they might give you some task that you're not supposed to do as a pregnant woman. So make sure that you do that day. And I'm also saying this because there are also some tasks that you can even do there that you're allowed to do as a pregnant woman, but say you have underlying health issues, you are not supposed to do that. So please ensure that you do a risk assessment. During the risk assessment, they let you know you cannot do manual handling. That's if you're a nurse or you're in the healthcare industry, of course. They will let you know that you cannot do manual handling, you cannot lift patients, you cannot do that. But for me, I remember that there were even additional things that I should have been able to do, but because of my situation and even all through my pregnancy, I was in severe pain. I was in pain every day, and paracetamol was the only thing I was given, and it could not do much. So because of that, there were even other tasks that my line manager actually outlined that I should not do. And it is good to do the risk assessment, because once it is done, nobody can force you to do that. I mean, that particular task that you've been said not to do. And your colleagues also would be aware that there are some things that you're not supposed to do. So for me, it was very easy. My line manager did the assessment, and she made it known to everybody that even though, because there are some general things that everybody would know, that a pregnant woman cannot lift a patient, cannot do this, cannot do that, you cannot lift equipment and all of that. But there were still other things that I could do. But my line manager made them realize that she lives with so much pain, she's actually in pain 24/7. So there are even other things that she's not allowed to do. So that risk assessment is actually very important. So now that your employer has actually done your risk assessment, or your line manager rather has done your risk assessment, the next thing you should discuss with your line manager is your rota. And that's because as a pregnant woman, you need to pace yourself, and you don't want a situation where they'll give you shifts back to back, or you don't want your schedule to be like jam-packed with so many shifts. So for me, immediately after the risk assessment was done for me, my line manager actually just told me, let's sit down and plan your rota. So together we're able to decide on a flexible rota that was suitable for my situation. So I was supposed to be doing 4 days in a week, 7:30 to 6 p.m. But she just thought, rather than doing all the 4 days at once, are you able to do Monday, Tuesday? You would have you'll be off duty on Wednesday, then you do Thursday and Friday, and then you'll be off every Saturday and Sunday. She was very good to me. I know some line managers are not like that, but it's still safe for you to sit with your line manager, and then together you can decide on a rota that will be suitable for you as a pregnant woman. You don't want to be racking up shifts back to back. So that was what was done for me. But I know you may not get that kind of an accommodating line manager or a friendly line manager, but regardless, speak to your line manager and tell them, the new manager, and tell him or her that you need to plan your rota considering that you're pregnant. I think that's very essential. So now that your rota has been planned, your risk assessment has been done, another thing you want to do is to apply for your maternity leave at the appropriate time. Don't forget that I think by 26 weeks you should have applied for your maternity leave. So like for me, I resumed my trust exactly 26 weeks. That was a week I clocked 26 weeks. So, and that was when I resumed the new job. So it was that same week that my line manager actually gave me the form to fill, to complete for the maternity leave application, because you're not supposed to go beyond that 26 weeks in normal circumstances. So ensure that as soon as you resume, in that new trust, you're able to complete that maternity leave application. Don't delay, please, so that you don't lose your entitlement when you go on maternity leave. So now that all of that is sorted, the last thing I would mention is that please don't try to impress other people, and don't try to do too much. I'm saying this because I used to be a workaholic, and then I was coming from trauma and orthopedics, a very busy specialty, a crazy specialty. Like, we handle loads and loads of big instruments, heavy instruments. Trauma and orthopedics would involve a lot of heavy lifting and all of that. So coming from that, and then being pregnant, of course, now moving to a lesser, I would say, well, a bit less stressful specialty, because when I moved to my new trust, I was put in plastic surgery, which is a little bit, I mean it's not even a little bit, it is quite less stressful compared to trauma and orthopedics. But then, because I was used to working so hard, when I was moved to plastic surgery, it felt like I wasn't doing anything. So despite the fact that I was sick, pregnant and all of that, I still wanted to do so much. But I remember my line manager and my colleagues would always tell me, you're pregnant, you're doing too much, please slow down. So that's the last thing I will talk about. Try and slow down. Don't do too much, please. Don't try to impress other people. I understand you just moved to a new trust, so you want to impress your line manager, you want them to know how hardworking you are. Don't worry, there will be lots of time to impress them when you come back from your maternity leave. This is not the time to impress them by overworking yourself or doing things you're not supposed to do. So if there are other things you feel I should have mentioned, especially if you actually change your employer when you're pregnant in the UK, let me know in the comment section. If you're presently pregnant and you're planning to relocate to another city, which means you would have to change your trust, or you're still within the same city but you're changing your employer and you have questions, ask them in the comment section. I would answer all your questions. So thank you so much, guys, for watching. Do what to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.